All right, strap yourselves in because we are going deep into the world of NASCAR. I know you guys wanted this deep dive, and trust me, we are going to cover it all. From those crazy bootlegging days all the way to the super high-tech sport we see today.
You know, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. A sport that literally started from people running from the law, evading the feds during Prohibition, becomes this worldwide phenomenon. Talk about adaptation and ingenuity and just pure love for speed, right?
And speaking of those moonshine runners back in the 20s, they were really souping up their cars, pushing them to the limit just to stay ahead of the law. Man, I can only imagine what those races must have felt like. Like the adrenaline rush. It's got to be straight out of a movie. I mean, they weren't just focused on pure speed, were they? They had to modify those cars to be stealthy, too, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about hidden compartments, right? And they had to beef up their suspensions to handle all that extra weight from the moonshine. Then you've got the engines tweaked to be powerful, yeah, but also quiet. You couldn't have the feds hearing you coming from a mile away. These guys were like the OGs of gearheads, just figuring stuff out, experimenting, and pushing those cars to the absolute limit.
Talk about high stakes. It's like a cat and mouse game, but with cars and probably a lot more danger. So how do we get from these backroad chases to, the organized spectacle that NASCAR is today?
Well, that's where Bill France Sr. comes in. This guy was a visionary. He saw what was going on with this wild, kind of chaotic underground racing scene, and he saw the potential. But he didn't just want to organize it, he wanted to make it legit. So in 1948, he brings together all the major players, sets up some rules, and boom, NASCAR is officially born down there in Daytona Beach, Florida.
That's got to be like a landmark moment for the sport, right? But I bet those early races, even with some rules, were still pretty rough and tumble. I mean, it's coming from a background of basically running from the law.
Oh, totally. We're talking dirt tracks, paved ovals, and the cars, well, they were modified, but you could still tell what they were. You know, Fords, Chevys, Oldsmobiles, all going head to head. It was raw, it was dangerous. And you know what? That gritty, unpolished feel is what grabbed people. The fans, they loved the spectacle, the skill it took to handle those cars.
There really is something about that raw energy that gets the blood pumping. But as NASCAR got more and more popular, the cars themselves started changing, right? It went from those souped-up family cars to something more specialized, built for pure speed.
Yeah, spot on. As the sport grows, the tech grows with it. Those stock cars become less stock and more like purpose-built racing machines designed for nothing but speed and competition. We're talking about advancements in engines, aerodynamics, how the chassis is designed, even safety features. It's like this constant evolution, this push to find any edge you can get.
And that's how we end up with what we see today. Those powerful, sleek machines hitting crazy speeds around those banked ovals. Speaking of ovals, it feels like they've become like the iconic image of NASCAR. Is there a story there?
Well, those banked turns, they're a signature of NASCAR. They let those cars hit those insane speeds we're talking about, and it makes for some awesome overtakes, I'll tell you that. But it's not just about going fast. It's about staying in control at those speeds, knowing how the track works, and picking the perfect moment to make your move.
Sounds like a chess match at 200 miles per hour. Now, we can't talk NASCAR without talking about the popularity explosion it had back in the 60s and 70s, right? It went from like a regional thing to a full-blown national phenomenon.
That's when NASCAR really broke into the mainstream. TV deals brought those races right into people's living rooms all across the country. The drivers became household names, and just like that, NASCAR cements itself as an American tradition. And with all that growth, the sport expands, creating more opportunities for drivers and fans. We get the Cup Series as the top level, then the Xfinity Series comes along, and the Craftsman Truck Series, all these different levels for people to get into.
So we've got this amazing journey from backwards bootleggers to this multi-tiered racing series with fans all over the country. But what about behind the scenes in NASCAR today? I mean, we see the drivers pushing their cars to the limit, but I'm guessing there's a lot more to it than just what we see on the track.
It really is like an iceberg, you know. What you see happening out there on the track, that's just the tip. Underneath, you've got this incredibly complex operation, like a well-oiled machine. You've got teams of engineers, mechanics, strategists, crew chiefs, all working together perfectly to give their driver the best shot at winning.
So it's not just about having a talented driver, it's a whole team effort, like some kind of high-speed ballet, but with a lot more horsepower and in danger.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't forget about technology. It plays a massive role in NASCAR these days. I'm talking about telemetry systems that are gathering tons of data from the cars in real time. Everything, engine performance, tire temperature, aerodynamic drag, G-forces, it's all being tracked.
Wow, that's wild. So they're basically getting like a constant stream of info about how the car's performing. What do they do with all that data?
Well, that's where the engineers come in. They take all that data and analyze it, looking for any advantage they can get. They can make adjustments to the car setup during the race, change the fuel strategy, even give the driver feedback on their driving style.
So it's like having a mini mission control for each car, constantly crunching numbers and making decisions that could affect the outcome of the race. Talk about pressure. What kind of impact does all that data analysis actually have on the race itself?
Oh, it can be huge. I mean, it can be the difference between winning and losing, plain and simple. Teams can use the data to optimize pit stops, figure out how long the tires are going to last, even try to predict what their rivals are going to do. It's like a high-stakes game of information warfare, but at 200 miles per hour.
You know, you can't talk about NASCAR without bringing up those iconic races, the Daytona 500, the Brickyard 400, the Southern 500. These aren't just races, they're like events. They've got so much history and legend behind them.
Absolutely. Each one has its own personality, its own stories of incredible victories and crushing defeats. Daytona, well, it's known for those crazy high speeds and pack racing. The Brickyard, that brings the prestige of IndyCar into the world of stock car racing.
And the Southern 500.
Oh man, the Southern 500, that's old school NASCAR. A real test of endurance on one of the toughest, most historic tracks out there.
For the fans, these races are like pilgrimages. They come from all over the place, decked out in my favorite driver's gear, ready to experience the spectacle, the roar of the engines, the thrill of the competition. It's a real community, a shared passion that spans generations.
Speaking of those passionate fans and these legendary races, it's crazy how much technology has changed the way we experience NASCAR. We're not just stuck watching it on TV anymore.
Yeah, now you've got social media, live streaming cameras inside the cars. It's like you're right there in the middle of the action. You can follow your favorite drivers, see what's happening behind the scenes with the teams, even connect with other fans from all around the world.
It's a smart move by NASCAR. They're using all this tech to reach a younger audience, build up the excitement, and give the fans a more immersive experience.
So we've seen NASCAR come a long way from those moonshine running roots to this massive tech-driven sport. But the world's changing pretty fast these days. What do you think the future holds for this American icon?
That's the big question, isn't it? We're talking about a sport built on those powerful internal combustion engines. And meanwhile, the car industry is moving towards electric and self-driving vehicles. Can NASCAR adapt and stay relevant in this new world?
Some people say electric racing just won't have that same raw appeal. You know, the roar of the engines, the smell of gasoline, that feeling of raw power that's always been a part of NASCAR. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a real concern, I'll admit. There's definitely something primal and exciting about the sound and fury of a gas-powered stock car. But I also think NASCAR is all about innovation, pushing the boundaries. I have faith they can find a way to keep that essence, that thrill of the competition, even in a world of electric cars.
Maybe it's a chance for them to reinvent themselves, to bring in a new generation of fans who are passionate about things like sustainability and new technology. Imagine electric stock cars flying through the streets of a big city. That'd be something to see, wouldn't it?
Now that would definitely turn heads, and it could open up a whole new world of possibilities for track design, racing strategy, even what kind of cars are competing. We might even see a fusion of traditional NASCAR with things we see in Formula E, like a hybrid racing experience that appeals to both longtime fans and newcomers.
That's an interesting thought. And it ties into another challenge for NASCAR, right? Reaching out beyond their traditional fan base.
Exactly. NASCAR, it's deeply American, but they've been testing the waters internationally with those exhibition races in Mexico and Canada. And I've heard some talk about exploring possibilities in Europe and Asia.
Could we see NASCAR become a truly global phenomenon, like Formula One? It'd be quite a challenge to take on an established global motorsport with a dedicated following, wouldn't it?
It wouldn't be easy, that's for sure. They'd be up against motorsports that have been around for a long time with their own loyal fan bases, and they'd have to figure out how to navigate those cultural differences and all the logistical challenges. But if they can tap into those new markets, create a global appeal, then the potential for growth is enormous.
Sounds like NASCAR's at a crossroads, facing challenges but also some big opportunities. How do you think they should handle this pivotal moment in their history? Do they stick to their roots and risk becoming a thing of the past, or do they embrace change and risk losing their core fans?
It's a tough balancing act. They got to hold on to what makes NASCAR unique, that close racing, those daring overtakes, the passion of the fans. But at the same time, they need to evolve to stay relevant in a world that's changing fast.
It's like they're taking a page out of their own playbook. Those early moonshine runners, they had to be adaptable, innovative, just to stay ahead of the law. Maybe that same spirit can guide NASCAR as they navigate the road ahead.
That's a great point. And it's not just about the technology or going global. NASCAR also needs to remember the human side of things, the stories of the drivers, the teams, the fans. That's what really connects people to the sport.
You know, we've been talking big picture about technology, globalization, all those challenges. But they're right. At its heart, NASCAR is about people. It's about those drivers putting it all on the line every time they get in the car, the teams that work so hard to support them, the fans who create that incredible atmosphere at the track.
It's about rivalries, friendships, victories, heartbreak. It's that human drama on and off the track. That's what people connect with. That's what makes NASCAR more than just a sport.
So as we think about the future of NASCAR, we can't just focus on the tech, the global expansion, the marketing. It's about the people who make this sport what it is. It really hits me that NASCAR has always been about pushing the limits. I mean, think about it. From those early days, outrunning the law, that it's innovating with the cars, now they're figuring out how to stay relevant in a world that's changing so fast. It's a sport that's all about adapting, wouldn't you say?
No doubt about it. NASCAR has this amazing ability to bounce back. It's faced all sorts of challenges, right? Economic downturns, changing trends, and it always seems to come out even stronger. It's like they've got that moonshine runner spirit built right in, that grit, the determination. They don't give up.
I love that analogy. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, what do you think are the most important things for NASCAR to hold on to as it moves into the future? What are the core values that need to stay strong even as things change?
That's a really good question. I'd say it comes down to a few key things. First, the competition has to stay tight. NASCAR's known for those close races, the battles right down to the finish line. You never know who's going to win. That's what keeps the fans on the edge of their seats. Got to keep that feeling that anything can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like watching a pack of cars all fighting for position, and, any little mistake could send someone spinning out. It gets your heart racing.
For sure. And beyond the competition, there's that human element. NASCAR needs to keep telling the stories of the drivers, the teams, the families, the fans, all the personalities, the passion. That's what people relate to. That's what makes those connections.
We talked a lot about the challenges NASCAR is facing, but hearing you talk about those core values, that close competition, the human stories, the excitement of it all, it makes me feel optimistic about what's ahead. It feels like as long as NASCAR remembers what makes it special, it can handle whatever comes its way.
I agree. NASCAR has an incredible history, a passionate fan base, and a real spirit of innovation. It's helped them get through tough times before. If they can use those strengths, adapt to the changes happening, and never lose sight of what makes the sport so great, I think NASCAR is going to be around for a long time to come.
It's amazing to think about those early moonshine runners just tearing through those back roads. They probably never imagined they were starting something that would become this huge global phenomenon. And now, almost 100 years later, NASCAR's still pushing boundaries, still evolving, still captivating people with that mix of raw power and human drama.
And you know what? That's the beauty of it. It's a sport that never stops changing. It's always adapting. But somehow, deep down, it stays true to where it came from. That's what makes NASCAR so interesting, so enduring.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We've covered a lot of ground today, from those bootlegging days to the high-tech world of NASCAR now. And we've even looked ahead at what the future might hold. What's one thing that really stood out to you from all of this?
What really struck me is that NASCAR's not just a sport. It's kind of a mirror of American culture, in a way. The ingenuity, the love of speed, that underdog spirit. It's all about evolving, pushing limits, finding a way to overcome obstacles.
That's a great point. And to everyone listening out there, the next time you see those cars flying around the track, remember, you're seeing more than just a race. You're seeing this legacy of innovation, the power of human determination, and this incredible celebration of competition. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of NASCAR.